Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. First and foremost, folks, let's talk about the latest numbers around unemployment, how blacks account for 90% of those who are unemployed in this recent spike. We'll talk about the numbers in a moment. Also, President Biden, the Democrats, and the youth vote, what the president is doing to try to make sure that the next generation vote for him and his party. We'll have that conversation later on. We talk about the science and power of food with the restaurant scientist, Jason Wallace. And I got a big conversation. Black women are unapologetic about their sexuality. My question is it necessary? We'll have that discussion with our sister Suzette Speaks. Stay with us. It's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the discussion. Folks, we got a lot to talk about, so I want you to invite you to join us for the conversation. We are streaming live on various platforms, including our very own website, blackstarnetwork.com. Also, you can see us on Amazon News if you got that Roku TV, so you can see us live and in living color. And we're streaming there. Just tell Alexa that you want to play news from Black Star Network, and we would love to see you. Also, we are streaming on YouTube under Roland Martin's page, and this is the space where you can jump in and be a part of today's culture crew to share your thoughts, share your ideas, and most importantly, pose your questions as we have today's conversation. So join the crew, and I see the crew is already in here. Karen Connor, Damon Blissett, Pretty Brown, Mimi, 726 Jawan, Yvette, who else? I know I got a lot of other people. My sister Suzette Speaks jumped into the chat early. Yes. You don't like my music? I see you. I'm waiting on a number of people. I don't see Corinna. I don't see Willie Frazier. I don't see a number of y'all, man. Jump into the chat right now as the crew is gathering as we have these conversations. All right, folks, let's jump right into it. First and foremost, the big conversation that we wanted to talk about is the situation with unemployment in Black America. There have been new numbers to show that guess what? In a recent unemployment spike, Black Americans, Black workers account for 90% of the unemployment cases. Take a look at some of these numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and their report. This is coming from The Hill. This new Bureau of Labor Statistics report that was published this past Friday found that Black Americans make up nearly 90% of those who are unemployed in the U.S. since April. Let's jump to that other one. Let's get that other quote. That's from Biden. We're going to talk about the President Biden in a few moments. There it is. So since April, Black people have made up 90% of those who are unemployed in the United States. Black workers made up about 267,000 of the 300,000 new unemployment cases this spring, according to the report. The current unemployment rate of the demographic sits at 6%, nearly twice the rate of white employment, which sits at 3.1%. So we're seeing within our community that our unemployment is double that of white communities across the country. Here to talk to us a little bit about this and get her take on the situation is my sister. She is an attorney. She is the host of the Suzette Speaks show on YouTube. And we are certainly happy to have her. My sister Suzette Speaks. Suzette, good afternoon. How are you feeling, sweetheart?
Fantastic to be back. I missed y'all. Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday.
Yes.
Great to be here.
Absolutely. All right, Suzette, let's talk a little bit about these numbers. 90%?
No.
90%? Talk to me. What do you make of this latest situation of what we're seeing with unemployment in Black America right now?
Well, again, great to be back, everybody, and greetings from hot Miami, Florida. We burning up down here, y'all. But yes, these numbers are burning up. I'm looking at some of the reporting that's come out, and I've been watching what the White House has had to say, and it's quite scary, shocking, I'm fearful as to what the next few months will look like, because this has been a 3-month trend so far where the unemployment rate for Black America has been much higher and is increasing. So we have a problem. We have a huge issue. And I was watching Corinne Jean-Pierre from the White House briefing room try to talk about this, and saying that these numbers are often fluctuating and there may be sudden changes, but we're seeing a pattern here that has to be addressed sooner rather than later. And of course, the White House is limited in some of its levers that it can use. Of course, the Fed, our Federal Reserve, sets monetary policy, uses interest rates, uses money supply, how much money is in the system, to try to control the economy as best as it can. But we have a serious problem here in the United States with why we seem to be leading at such a disproportionate rate when it comes to Black unemployment.
It's a real big problem, right? And here's the thing about this, because I find it fascinating that we're actually seeing more Black people becoming more employed. Like months, I think last month they talked about it, that we were at 5.9, about 5.8%. Oh no, I'm sorry, 5.6% unemployment. Now we're up to 6, just in a matter of 30 days. So is this an indicator of what? That we are not getting into the job market, or the job opportunities aren't available? Like, what is this a sign of from your vantage point, Suzette?
Well, I think it has to do with geography. I think it has to do with the types of industries that Black people are more represented in, or highly represented when it comes to, service industries. For example, here in Miami, I was down in Miami Beach staying at a hotel, but, we have, fluctuations as we are seeing increase in travel. We know that some of those jobs that we lost during the pandemic will be coming back. But honestly, Farajii, I think we really haven't truly recovered from the pandemic. A lot of positive news has been coming out from the Biden administration when it comes to where the economy is. And it's true. And we've seen a small drop in inflation, and that's true. But this has had the pandemic has had kind of this long-term effect when it comes to the Black community. So I think it's the type of jobs in the sectors that we work in, whether it's manufacturing that is no longer, in our big cities, or just in our country in general and being sent to other places, whether it's what we saw from, travel having somewhat of a recovery, but you would expect then Black jobs to kind of follow that. But we're seeing also, I would venture to say, some pushback when it comes to DEI and things when it comes to diversity in the workplace not being as prioritized. And again, that depends on the industry, and again, skill levels and educational levels and everything plays into that part of the narrative. But yeah, it is quite critical that we try to address what we're seeing. And if that has to do with an educational piece, if that has to do with, training, et cetera, and programs in that regard, I think that will be helpful, because maybe some of those jobs are just not coming back. So we might have to redirect, retrain, purpose ourselves for the industries that are kind of showing growth over the long term. But it's again, I also have something to offer, which is anecdotal. I was talking to my brother about it, and I think about this as maybe a small segment, but oftentimes I think because of the pandemic and people becoming accustomed to maybe doing a lot with like one large, what should I say, injection of monies. I think people may have become quite creative in how they're making money, so they may not be returning to the typical job market as much, because they're finding new sources of income, if that makes sense.
There you go. Okay, had to unmute. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The thing is, though, I think that we need to keep in mind, Suzette, is that as much as we're seeing these numbers, every person can't be an entrepreneur. So I don't want us to put out this narrative that just because, you might be, struggling either finding a job or struggling to keep a job, that you just need to go out and venture on your own. Entrepreneurship is a whole different beast, right? It's a whole different bag. Yes. And so, I think that, there's this tendency to believe that if you can't get a job or you can't find sustainable income, just go out there and start working on your own. If you want to stay struggling,
Yes, you make a good point. And that's what we were kind of talking about, because you might say, okay, let me start selling X, Y, and Z.
Right,
Your
right,
family's
right,
excited.
right, right.
Everybody's excited. You get a full, good 15,000, 30,000 injection into your business, and you're so excited. But what does that look like over 3 months, 6 months, a year? And sometimes we have high hopes in, this entrepreneurship arena. But as we talked about on this show, a lot of the businesses that are started, or majority, as Roland Martin will point out, are one person, operations. They're not hiring anyone. And then oftentimes the income that is driven from those businesses are not what we would want in order to be a sustainable source for us to take care of ourselves financially. So I agree with you full-heartedly. I do think some of that, though, is still kind of rubbed off since the pandemic, where people have found their hustle and have found, unique ways to add to that income. And
Right.
I can just speak down here in South Florida. A lot of people seem hesitant, like, I'll go hustle and then go find a job. Or maybe the type of job that they would like is not available to them, because there are fast food jobs now, Farajii, down here paying $18, $20, $26 to work at like a McDonald's. So nothing
Really?
wrong with that. Yes. So depending on what you're looking for, and what industries, like I say, are geographically close to you, you also have that impact in terms of distance and travel, etc., for the type of income that you want. But I think there are people that are looking seriously and still can't find, which is another issue. But yeah, I think there's
Absolutely.
some of that, we got our own and we found a way to make it, work with what little we could kind of scrounge, and in some cases make profitable, sizable profits from, side hustles and other endeavors. But yeah, this is not, I don't think, folks, I think the last numbers this month was 600,000 people. That's a lot of people.
Wow.
And
That's a
that
lot
impacts
of people.
Black family, and therefore our
Yeah.
Black community. So we definitely have to look at what is really going on. And I think it can be a mixture of factors.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. You don't like my music, my guy. You said I can't understand why anyone would work full time for minimum wage. That means desperation and no opportunities. You also said you don't like my music. It's perfectly rational. I would rather be poor and free than slightly less poor and work for minimum wage. Mm. Real quick, Suzette, to respond to you don't like my music, and I hear what he's saying, but sometimes you don't have those choices, right? Like if you don't have the educational if you don't have that education to back up your experience in some cases, if you don't have the time, the experience, like working at one steady job for 2 or 3 years, that also plays a role. So what do you say to a person like you don't like my music who's saying like, look, hey man, working for minimum wage pretty much sucks. I mean, especially given the way the market is.
Yeah, it becomes the question is the short-term impact versus a long-term impact. So I'll say this: when you do have a long-term gap in your resume and you're looking to work for others in terms of, the job market, it becomes more difficult. The easiest way to find a new job is to already have a job. So we have to keep in mind that short-term freedom sometimes can lead to, chronic unemployment for when you do want, insurance of a certain type. If you do want, there are certain protections, retirement plans, and of course, higher wages that go with staying in the job market and the ability, hopefully, to move up or move around. So I hear what he's saying when it comes to like, why would we start there? But we want our, especially like our youth, but our folks who are also, taking care of themselves, taking care of families, to be able to do so as adequately as possible. So anytime we have the opportunities to go out and get something, my viewpoint, and again, you can disagree, is something is better than nothing, especially if you are looking to take care of your family. A lot of people also, Farajii, has, especially here in Miami, have multiple jobs that are minimum wage, which again
Mm.
kind of goes against the narrative that people are lazy or they're not looking. They
Oh
can't
no.
find a full time. They go in 2 and 3 part times, which is also a stress on family life, because again, if you're working, you're not able to focus
You're not home.
what your kids doing. So there's drawbacks across the board when we cannot find what we want. But I would caution folks to, again, here people will hustle, get 20 grand, 30 grand. And again, anecdotally speaking, kind of back off and want to feel free. But how we get wealth is how we stack that, and we continue to work, and we continue to go after, the next opportunity. So that freedom comes with a cost. And we want to keep that in mind, that there's always balance. You can always take your time off from your job, like as well as your side hustle, but trying to trade one for another sometimes will give us some short-term sense of freedom, but long-term it might hurt your career and your economic trajectory.
Absolutely. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, Suzette, we're going to continue the conversation because a lot of people are checking in. They're talking about everything from the cost, the amount of the minimum wage to the cost of side hustles. So I want us to kind of delve a little further into that to share what could possibly be some solutions to this. So we're going to get into that on the other side. Folks, join us in the conversation. We're streaming live on YouTube right now under Roland Martin. Post your comments, share your thoughts, and even your questions. And let's continue to talk about this new statistic that shows that Black people, Black Americans, Black workers, folks, comprise 90% of the latest unemployment spike for the month, and how we can find ourselves a better way out. Stay with us. The conversation continues on the culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us.
We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20036-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Big Tobacco targets black communities with marketing for menthol cigarettes. In the 1950s, less than 10% used menthol cigarettes. Today, it's 85%. FDA, ban menthol cigarettes, save lives.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been talking about this alarming new statistic that is coming out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is about unemployment, which shows that Black Americans have accounted for nearly for 90% of the new unemployment cases for this past 30 days. And our unemployment is up to 6%, 2 times more than the national average of white unemployment in this country. Man, oh man, we've been talking about this with my sister Suzette Speaks, who's an attorney and the host of the Suzette Speaks show, one of our great culture crew members. Suzette, I wanted to kind of delve a little bit deeper in this because a lot of people have been checking in, talking about how this is such a real problem that there isn't enough conversation to talk about minimum wage. I said this, like I remember back in Baltimore, there was a huge conversation about minimum wage being $15 an hour. And people were like, oh man, can we make this happen? Can we make this happen? And I'm like, $15 an hour? Are you crazy? That is small. That is nothing in modern day America. We need at least $25 an hour if you're talking about a quote unquote livable minimum wage. I remember back in the day, I'm dating myself now, y'all. Minimum wage used to be $7.25.
Crazy, right? Thinking about that.
$7.25, right? Yeah. If you had a job that paid $12, $13, $15 at that time, you were like big balling. You were like, oh my God. But gas was low. Yeah. Price of bread, milk, all of those things were low. But do we need to really revisit this on a national level to have a minimum wage that speaks to the economic space that we're in this country? 25, maybe 26, 27, if you're living in places like Miami, like some of these major cities. Miami, LA, New York, all of these places. Do we need to have a bigger conversation nationally about this issue?
I would say so, but we have to always keep in mind that right now we have a Republican-controlled Congress. We have Democrats on the House of Representatives side in control, but we have Republicans on the Senate side. So any legislation has to come from, approval from both sides of Congress. So that makes it difficult, Farajii, but things can be done on the statewide level. We have several states in our union that have, higher minimum wage standards. Of course, we have brothers and sisters living in states that have very low minimum wage standards, again, depending on where you live. Fight for 15 here in Florida, I think will go into effect, if I'm not mistaken, maybe like 2025. So people are still.
Wait a minute. Hold on, Suzanne. Hold on. Make sure I understand this. The fight for 15 in Florida will go in effect 2 years from now.
Yeah, and that was passed several years ago. So what happens is we'll have these statewide ballot initiatives to get the will of the people through around the Congress, the House and the Senate for Florida, because they are Republican control as well. So we'll have the ballot initiative process where if 60% of us say that's what we want, we get it. But then our state legislators will go around us and then re-legislate confinements around it. So they will narrow it, or they will extend the time, or they will now put new rules to make exceptions for certain types of businesses, et cetera, et cetera. So we sometimes can see them circumvent, is the word I was looking for, is the will of the people quite easily. But yes, this is going to trickle down. When Black people are not making money and not building wealth, we're tapping into savings, we're tapping into credit cards and payday loans and things that we know are predatory that end up, creating this slippery slope. We have a housing crisis across this country, especially in the big cities here in Miami. I don't understand how people who have families and are making minimum wage at multiple jobs are even able to survive really and take care of their kids properly and adequately so that they become contributing members of society. Remember that? And that everyone has access to this American dream so that people can live out their fullest potential. Well, if you're hungry, or if your housing is not, stable and you got to be moving here, you living with that one, and multiple homes are very common. Multiple generational homes are very common here in South Florida. People are finding ways to survive by living with grandma them and your cousin them and doing what you have to do to save money and pool resources. We've always been very creative at doing that. But if we are not actively participating in the economy, like I say, it sounds like, all right, we might be making do, but long term, the amount of wealth that Black people will be losing out on that will not be going into Black households and supporting Black children to become again their highest and best selves is problematic. So we really have to get down to maybe what the government's role can be in seeing what sectors and why we are seeing this trend and where they can play some kind of administrative type role in it. But again, it's kind of tricky because again, we have Congress as a kind of a stepping stone, and we don't have a very cooperative Congress with the House divided. So yeah, the Biden administration has to do more to definitely address this. But again, their tools are not as flexible as what Congress by law can do.
This is where I say this point right here, Suzette, for me, that is like the sticking point. When we talk about inequity, inequality in this country, this is beyond race, right? Because this is talking about people's ability to take care of themselves, to take care of their families and whatnot. And when you do have people in Congress who are making millions of dollars in some cases, right? Who are getting extra loan for businesses that they don't need to even find, who are taking advantage and finding loopholes in the system, but the American people are being fleeced. American people are being sold a lie. The lie is that if you just work hard, you will make the progress that you want to make. That's one of the biggest lies, because at the end of the day, you poor people, and I'm saying this with I'm saying this with utmost respect. People who have low income, poor people in this country are the hardest working people in America. You just said it. 2-3 jobs, sacrificing their time, sacrificing their ability to be with their families, sacrificing their bodies. And you telling me that if you poor in America, and then check this out, you become the scapegoat. You have to bear the brunt of a system that if you make a certain, you can't get quality housing. You can't get new opportunities. If you want to get a loan, you get an interest up the ass. I mean, it's sickening. And then people like, well, and people in Congress, they stop in small things. I mean, what? And I get it that if you pushed up the minimum wage in some states, it will create a domino effect. Let it fall. You know what I'm saying? Let the effect happen. Because people, look, in LA, we got 40,000 plus people on the streets. Literally on the streets, tents, encampments, the whole nine, right? And then you talking about, and the crazy part is you got all this tourism, right? You got all of this same thing in any other major city, Los Angeles, New York, Miami, Chicago. You got all these people that come into these cities, right? People can't pay for rent. I mean, this stuff is getting so bad. You just like, you look at your government and you wonder, do y'all even care? I mean, seriously, because at the end of the day, the American people are suffering. And then you want to come out in front of us and say, we're making strides, and yeah, the country is strong. Man, what America are y'all looking at, Suzanne? I just don't get it. I just don't understand. And again, this is bigger than black and white and Latino and Asian. I'm seeing so many people who are struggling. Look at it.
And not just very poor, Farajii, is creeping up to working class, to lower
middle class. There ain't no middle class.
People are struggling.
There ain't no middle class no more.
Yeah, people are looking. Do I buy gas? Do I buy groceries? Do I send my kid on this trip? Does my kid get to do, this activity? I have a friend who has, 12-year-old in basketball. She's like, do I need to start to GoFundMe just so he can do his travel basketball? Because as a single mom, she's trying her best to make sure he has the opportunities for exposure and leadership and, confidence building and all the wonderful things of male mentorship that he's missing. And she's trying to do that. But then you got your bills plus all the things in which, you see families are searching for alternatives to provide. So we can't go around this much longer. I think, inflation has been a global issue. Okay, I get that Biden administration always tries to emphasize that. But at the same time, it's just becoming harder and harder for people to survive. And again, these numbers, we have to pay close attention to them. Because again, if we're losing that many people from the job market, Black wealth across the board is going down. And that's not what we want.
And look, and check it out, Suzette. I know you came across these numbers just as much as I have. The disparity between Black households and white households was already big. I remember hearing, and I'll never forget this, hearing a report that said it would take nearly 200 plus years to close the gap between Black and white households in terms of economic disparity. 200 plus years. Who got that? Who got that type of time? I can't bank on it. I mean, if the average person, and I think that our assets, I've seen around like 5,500 in terms of like assets for the networks of Black households. Thank you. 5,500 compared to thousands of dollars compared to white households. And it blows me away that we can't have a sensible conversation about jobs, right? I mean, we're looking at numbers based upon, a couple of 100,000 people here and a couple of 100,000 people there. But we're not looking at the bigger picture of you got millions of people. How many people live in a 2-bedroom household in most of your cities? You know what I'm saying? Well, I'm talking about grown adults, 2, 3 of them. How many are doing gig work? How many are doing side hustles? And a lot of the crew members are saying, Suzette, that it takes money to make money. Even if you have a side hustle, you still got to put something in the pot to get the ball rolling.
Yeah. And then I'll also add, Farajii, especially as we get into retirement, when people are thinking about, and maybe they're not thinking enough about what happens when you turn 65 and 66 and 67. Now, when you retire, Social Security is based on how much you pay into the system. So oftentimes when we are not working,
no, we can't even talk about that.
Our active years, our healthy years, our strong years, we're all going to age. I know we're young and strong and people try to, think, well, I'll be all right. The government is not going to have that much money to give you monthly, especially if you have not earned a ton of money. You have to have your own supplemental retirement plan going at the same time, because what people think, Medicaid, Medicare, and all these things are going to cover, it's much less. And a lot of places of business and doctors' offices don't even take them because it's very difficult sometimes with the billing for them to get paid by.
Please, Suzanne, we ain't got all day to talk about.
I'm just looking. Okay, we have to be thinking smart as well. Now there are obstacles and barriers that are keeping us out. We have to
right.
But we have to do what we can proactively, thinking ahead for our trajectory over the next 20, 30, 40 years as we age, because those government programs, they're trying to chop them up anyway. But again, what you contribute is what you get out. So your salary over the years of work oftentimes matters in terms of the disbursement you get when you're retired. So we got to keep that in mind too. Missing these years is vital.
And let me just say, let's not talk about healthcare costs, insurance costs in this country. Let's not talk about, I'm gonna call it what it is. It's a racket.
Yeah.
It's a racket, man. It is. If you get sick,
done. I don't see how you do it if you don't have insurance.
If you get into a car accident, and even if it's not your fault, and you get hurt in a car accident, you got to take some time off, or you know what I'm saying? If you get hurt on the job.
Yeah, it's
who's paying for that?
Exactly. And if you have to pay out of pocket, we're all Americans are like, most of us are one serious illness away from being on the street. So this is serious stuff. And
here's the thing, real quick. I'm getting me fired up. Man. You get me? Let me tell you something. This is the bullshit. I must call it just for that. This is the bullshit. They talk all that stuff about after COVID. You know what I'm saying? We're going to shut down. We're going to do, we're going to do rental assistance. We're going to before the president even said the pandemic is over, it's back to business for America. You know what I'm saying? You got to pay for rent and all of this stuff. You got your credit scores and everything. All of this stuff is happening, and folks are being forced along, just pushed along. And this is, I think this is probably one of the hottest breeding grounds for revolution in this country, Suzette, is when we're looking at how people, the economics of this country, and I'm talking about for the average American, whether you're black or white, this is the breeding ground. You are creating domestic terrorists when you do not speak to, when you stop people from being able to take care of themselves and their family. You are creating enemies right within your borders. You ain't got to worry about the enemy with that, on the outside of America. Look at the policies that are happening on the inside of this country. And guess what? That enemy is going to be homegrown, old-fashioned, homemade American people. You're creating enemies.
Roger, you preaching. I mean, we have a lot more in common economically speaking. Dr. King talked about this, and that's when they killed him, when he started saying that poor people across the board, no matter the background, ethnicity, color, race, we have more in common when we look at what are these policies and are they serving us? And I think a lot of what we saw in terms of the reaction after President Obama was elected, right after like this crash, people's whole 401ks were in a tank. Housing, we've had two major housing crises. If you are a Gen X or millennial during your working period, we are actually marrying less because of the economics. We haven't talked about that, how it impacts your prospects of being able to take care of yourself and a family. So people are paired off less. It doesn't even have a racial component. I know we got to take
a break. We got to take a break because this always happens between me and you. We just throw breaks off. We got to take a quick pause. When we come back, more of the conversation. Stay with us, folks. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
For decades, the tobacco industry has deliberately targeted Black communities and kids with marketing for menthol cigarettes. It's had a devastating impact on Black health. Tobacco use claims 45,000 Black lives every year. It's the #1 cause of preventable death. In the 1950s, less than 10% of Black smokers used menthol cigarettes. Today, it's 85%. Menthol cools and numbs the throat, making it easier for kids to start smoking. Menthol also increases addiction, making it harder for smokers to quit. Menthol cigarettes are a big reason why Black Americans have a harder time quitting smoking and die at higher rates from smoking-related diseases like cancer, heart disease, and stroke. It's time to stop Big Tobacco from profiting off Black lives. An FDA ban on menthol cigarettes will improve Black health, save lives, and protect future generations from addiction. Learn more at tobaccofreekids.org/ban menthol.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Been talking to my sister Suzette Speaks as we've been talking about the latest numbers coming out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics about unemployment, and most importantly, how Black Americans are at the forefront of being unemployed in this latest round of unemployment spike. Suzanne, I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't expect the conversation to get as hot as it did with this one, right? But this is obviously something that a lot of people are very, very concerned about. That we're seeing right now that there is the trust that people have in the job market or their ability to get jobs or to find a future, right? I'm seeing some of the crew members checking in. People are saying stuff like, well, look, you're going to have to pay yourself first. You're going to have to invest in a 401k. And it's hard. And I hear all of that, but I'm going to keep it a buck. It's hard to think about the future if you don't know whether you're going to or how to eat right now in the present. It's hard. Mm-hmm. It's going to be hard. You can't sell nobody on a 401k future planning, which is beautiful, which I am in full agreement with, right? But if you don't have the presence of mind to say to yourself, hey, you know what? Even though if I make $10 an hour, let me put away $2 or $1.50. You know what I'm saying? If you can afford to.
Yes, I hear you. I hear you.
So how did we have that part of the conversation? How did we talk about future planning if we are challenged at the present moment with all of these other economic demands?
Yeah, I think it comes back to, and I appreciate your feedback, Sandy W, in the chat, when it comes back to either reinvention, retraining, or trying to apply your skill sets to different industries. Because right now, when it comes to where we see Black men and Black women mostly represented, for example, for Black men, oftentimes it depends on the type of work in terms of like construction industry and other places, service industry. I'm speaking for Florida because I know down here where you tend to see our numbers in larger amounts. It is going to take possibly pivoting and shifting. And again, it depends on your age and your family context, whether you're able to even do that, which would be, not even stopping from work, going back to school or taking retraining classes to go in a different direction at the same time as being able to feed yourself. But it's going to make it much more difficult, Farajii, because basically you're going to have to walk and chew gum. And it's not that simple, right? It's always the family and feeding and taking care of, basic needs comes first. And so all the other things that we're talking about are middle class problems, are upper middle class problems, are a luxury because there are not the same choices everyone is able to make. If you're not able to, as you pointed out, take care of your basic needs, you haven't moved up the Maslow hierarchy of needs now to I can invest or I can buy a property or I can, do whatever other vehicle to create wealth. That's why we are still kind of suffering and behind when it comes to our counterparts of different racial and ethnic backgrounds. So we have a lot more work we're going to have to do for ourselves, even though we're going to need to advocate for where the U.S. Federal government can and local can help do things like programs. I know there's a Heroes Act program right now. If you want to buy a house, I'm just throwing it out there, $25,000 if you qualify, that the feds are giving to get people, into. First, it was only people who had served or people who served as frontline workers, but now they've opened it up. We're going to have to advocate for programs like this that allow us to kind of get in the marketplace, get ahead or even equal, not even ahead to our counterparts, so that we are building wealth. Owning a house is one of the major ways in America that you become middle class and that you have, that more than $5,000 net worth. And most, Black families are not yet equal in terms of their home ownership. There's so many ways to look at this, Farajii, but there has to be public policy interest. But then we also have to, on an individual level and as a community, kind of find ways to create opportunities for us to enter into different types of work and repurpose our skills so that we are employable for what is available right now in the job market.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And I know that even with this conversation, there's so many different dynamics and there's so many facets of it. This latest piece of data that we just shared with everyone today is just a small part of it, but it's a domino situation, right? It's just a piece of the puzzle. And so it's a whole web folks, stuff that we're going to have to.
Yeah,
we can go very deep, and at the root of it all is, and I'm going to go back to my thing, and I think you can appreciate this. Does the American government care? I mean, seriously, do our political representatives care? You know what I'm saying? When you block legislation, that's a sign to me that you don't care. When you don't invest in in bringing the low income class up into the middle class, that means that you don't care. When you start to try to find loopholes to fit your economic agenda and work for your business interests, that's a sign that you don't care. So, you know, there's a lot that's in part of this. And then when you're talking about the institutional side of things, I mean, there has to be a change. And you would think that COVID would have changed that, because America was put on shutdown. You know what I'm saying? That a lot of things had to be different. We all talk about pretty much we thank God for life and all of that good stuff. But then as soon as that thing started to taper off, it's like, whoop, thank God for life, but we're going to get back to this almighty dollar.
Yeah.
What happened? What happened?
Summer 2020 came and went. It was like, okay, all right, George Floyd, but now
right. None of those companies actually put up the money that they said they were going to put up. That's based on latest research. So when you're talking about that, it's like now we're in a point now you don't even respect my humanity. And that is going to be the downfall, continue to be the downfall of this country, that we don't respect the humanity of one another. The government don't respect the humanity of the constituents. People don't respect the humanity of each other. And so we're going to continue to go there until it's too late. Until it's too late, then everybody gonna be like, but it's until it's too late. And guess what? Black folks, we're gonna have to figure out something different to do in this day and time. All right, look, I gotta take another quick pause. When we come forward, we're gonna be checking in and talking about the science and the power of food. We're gonna be checking in with Chef Jason Wallace, AKA the restaurant scientist, to talk to us about what's happening in the food industry today. So stay with us. The conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us.
We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Your money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Man, oh man, let me just say, if you missed the first half of the show, make sure you join us on Team Replay, as my sister Suzette Speaks always talks about. Join us right there, be a part of Team Replay. Check us out in the first half of the show. Where we talk just a little bit about unemployment and just the web of issues that come from the latest numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So definitely check us out at blackstarnetwork.com, blackstarnetwork.com. Go to our website, check us out on Amazon News. where you can find us on Roku TV. We're streaming there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And of course, stay tuned to us here on YouTube as we're streaming there under Roland Martin, and join us in the conversation. Such a great discussion in the first half. All right, folks, for the second half, we wanted to kick it off and talking about the science and power of food. You know, if you think about where we are in this country in terms of our weight, in terms of our relationship with food, you will understand that food is not just something that you consume, but it is truly a science behind it. So I'm very, very excited to be checking in with my brother, Jason Wallace, who is known as the restaurant scientist. He holds a master's in food business degree from the prestigious Culinary Institute of America. He is a restaurant operations scientist, and he's here to talk to us about the science and power of food. And I'm also joined by my sister, Suzette Speaks, as we chop it up with Jason Wallace. Jason, thank you so much, brother, for joining us this afternoon. How you feeling this afternoon, brother?
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, absolutely. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, first and foremost, they call you the restaurant scientist. Yeah. I got to know, bro, where does that come from?
Actually, it's a funny story. Dougie Fresh, the legendary rapper Dougie. I was doing some consulting work for him in Harlem at Dougie's Chicken and Waffles, and he had a team of people around him. And you know, when I began to break down the knowledge, right, the minutia of how do you really build wealth from restaurant operations. So I'm a chef by trade, but as you mentioned, you know, I got a master's degree in food business, and there's a difference between culinary arts and having a passion for food and truly understanding how to build wealth and maximize profit. So when I was explaining to him, you know, how I break down these numbers and how we look at the, you know, the cost per ounce and the labor costs and the variable costs and the relationship between variable costs and sales, Dougie was like, damn, man, you like some kind of scientist at this. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, he looked good. I was like, you know what? That's exactly what I am. So I actually went to, I trademarked it. So yeah, I trademarked and got the patent behind it. The restaurant scientist is my trademark. And shout out to Dougie Fresh, my man.
I was about to say, so shout out to Dougie Fresh for putting you on the path and getting you to talk about being the restaurant scientist. All right, first and foremost, brother, I'm loving that you come into these spaces and you try to really understand how food. What would you say is the current relationship that Black folks have with food? If there's a way for us to kind of sum it up, are we at a place where we are happy with the food choices? Are we becoming more critical about what's being offered on the plate here? What is our relationship with food at this point?
Yeah, well, food is a language of love, really, you know, on both sides, you know, dating males, females, whatever you have, what have you. But where we are with our culture, right? Independent Black-owned restaurants are the fabric of our communities. So you're gonna have every type of cuisine, from Caribbean to African to all up and down the North and Eastern Seaboard to Texas, Louisiana, and even on the West Coast. So food is kind of how, and hospitality is the one thing that transcends all cultural and linguistic barriers. So when you put those two worlds together, it's something that we've been doing for generations, but ultimately in today's market, you know, how do we really build generational wealth from multi-unit operations is kind of how I take it. So it goes beyond just the style of food and the service and the recipe flavor profiles. It really comes down to, you know, again, how many Black-owned restaurants are there in our communities now? We have a lot of gentrification happening across every major city in the United States. And I'm on a mission to make sure that Black restaurants survive those gentrification opportunities and business environments economically. Are we in contact with the developers who are coming into our communities and buying up this real estate and developing these, you know, commercial mixed-use residential establishments? Are we being priced out in terms of what's the price per square foot? I've seen it happen in Brooklyn. My office is in Harlem. My clients include the legendary Sylvia's Restaurant in Harlem, Harlem Hops, Setipani. You go back to Boulevard Bistro. So I've been in Harlem for the last 30 years, and I've witnessed the rise of higher end quality cuisines, the rise of restaurants doing $2, $3, $4 million a year in sales. But I've also seen the decline of literally Black-owned restaurants, and it's a problem for me, and it's really become my mission.
I want to, Chef. I want to bring my sister Suzette into the discussion as I'm talking about this as well. Look, Suzette, first stop smiling because we're talking about food. You talking about food now? You was all smiles and whatnot.
Yes, no, I just find welcome, brother. Your resume and acumen and what you do is so unique. What an interesting skill set you have. And I'm curious, if I may, Farajii, there are points I wanted to ask about.
Come on.
I have, from Miami, I have cousins that own restaurants and stuff like that, and they've been holding on when it comes to like inflation and the cost of, goods, and people still want the lunch special down here. We big on the $5.99 lunch special, and she, has to oblige. She has to find ways. Yeah, no, we can be very cheap with our more our pocket than our palate, but there's so many barriers to entry. I want to ask you, seriously, is this like a rich man's or woman's game? Can everyday people enter this type of business? I think sometimes, and I hope you are not upset with me, but I say that's the last business if I get into it. If I had money, I'm not getting. It's hard work, like over. You talk about entrepreneurship, working almost 24/7 when you own an establishment like this. So I'm wondering, like, for people who may be from outside of a family business or having some kind of ownership stake already, would it be wise to look into starting a restaurant? Say you come up with some money, a family inheritance or something, and you're looking, or savings, and you're looking at where should I invest for a growth opportunity for my future and possible, we just talked about retirement. Is this still a steady game for those of us who might not already have experience?
Great points. Absolutely. So it's a volume game, right? It's a volume game, and it's no different than any other business. You need to have the financial ability to actually know how much money you really need. What ends up happening is there's other aspects of inequalities that impact us as Black folks, right? So someone will go into the restaurant with little to no experience. I don't recommend that. Particularly, you got people like me out here that you can hire that can give you advice on not only just, before you even sign that lease, what's that business plan look like? What's the financial model? How much money do you need in terms of build out, rent deposits, utility deposits, opening food inventory, opening beverage inventory, labor? All of those things go into determining how much money is required. Now, I can tell you that Chase and TD Bank and Wells Fargo, they do not like to lend to restaurants because of the negative connotations associated with most restaurants fail within 5 years. But to be on the other side of that is maybe it was a 5-year plan, right? So what I like to do is I like to get in front of these potential restaurateurs, either existing, which I can help you scale and get to north of 10% EBITDA, right? Earnings before income taxes, depreciation, and amortization, right? So the average multi-unit operators are successful because they have the blueprint, because they understand the relationships between variable costs and sales. They understand that fixed costs never change. So they understand what their daily and weekly break-even points are. Many small operators get caught up in the minutia of the day-to-day operation, as you're speaking to, and they really don't have that ability to be the CEO. You're CEO by default, right? Because you started the company. But technically, would someone hire you to be the CEO of a food service company with the limited experience that you have? So someone like myself can come in and do that financial analysis, as well as understand what's the exit strategy. So if you sign a 5-year lease, the rule of thumb that I utilize is, if I sign a 5-year lease, I want to get my initial investment back within 24 months, right? So that in the last 36 months of that lease is profit. So now I can get a return on my investment, right? If I sign a 10-year lease, then I know that I have a longer rent. I have a longer runway to not only just getting my initial investment back, but now I have a longer runway of how long can I really generate 10% returns on my investment, just like any other investment. So we're not approaching it that way. We're not approaching it scientifically. We're approaching it emotionally, right? Their emotion. I'm a cook. My mom had a great mac and cheese recipe or these types of things. And now, I think that everybody wants my mama's mac and cheese. That it doesn't work that way. You really have to have a strategy from the time you start talking to these landlords about these leases, going into if there's any TI, tenant improvements, what's that going to look like? How long are the escalations how long do you have before escalations kick in? I've seen people sign leases where they're only giving themselves 3 months to ramp up. It takes longer than that if you're going to be building from a vanilla box, which is from scratch, or if you're taking over a second generation restaurant. So to answer your question, every plan is different depending on whether it's you're building from scratch, vanilla box, or you're taking over a second generation restaurant and you're just retrofitting that so that now we can do a financial analysis. And I come hard. I don't pull no punches. This is not a hobby. I don't care how good you think your soup is. I don't even feel your soup if it's not proper. I don't care how great you think you're a great cook, you're a great chef. It's about profitability and building wealth.
Numbers.
Hey, Chef, we gotta take a quick pause. But I want, Chef, how many times has somebody said, "But my mama likes it"?
Exactly. Yeah, I want these greens. My grandmother's greens. I'm like, well, go get your grandmother and come back.
Who is this for? Everybody.
Right. My mama likes it. All right, look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, crew, I want y'all to join us in the conversation. We checking in with the restaurant scientist, Chef Jason Wallace. We still got my sister Suzette speak. And of course, I want to hear from you. What's your take as we talk about the science and power of food? Join us in the conversation on our YouTube page under Roland Martin, and stay with us. There's a whole lot to get you here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. We've been talking to the restaurant scientist, Chef Jason Wallace, to talk to us a little bit about the science and power and the business of food, as we talk about opening up new restaurants, talking about what you expect and more. Folks, I want you to join us in the conversation. Post your thoughts, share your questions in our YouTube page, under Roland Martin on YouTube, and pose your questions and share with us, what do you think about this conversation as we're talking to the restaurant scientists? Plus, I'm joined by my sister, my wonderful sister, Suzette Speaks, as we having this conversation. All right, so Chef, here's my question for you then, because I'm listening to Suzette, and I'm thinking to myself, in terms of the offerings, the cuisine offerings in the Black community, it seems still to be very limited.
Fried chicken.
Like,
sorry.
It still seems to be very, it still seems to be very limited, right? Like one, this is kind of like a 2-point question. One is, can we redefine soul food to be much more healthier than what it has been traditionally? And then 2, because there are changing diets within the Black community, gluten-free, vegan, pescatarian, we have all of these changing diets. But when you go into Black neighborhoods, Black communities across this country, and I'm sure you've been all over the place, Chef, but you're still seeing the same places, the same type of cuisine being offered, right? Is it that is it a lot more money to open up a place that, that caters to these various diets? Or is this laziness that people are like, man, I just want to serve y'all what I want to serve? Like, what is it? Why aren't we seeing the diversity of food offerings like we see in white communities, right? I live in LA. So if you go to West LA, you're gonna get gluten-free, you're gonna get vegan. If you go to South LA where Black folks are, hey Chef, they asking, what's gluten-free?
Yeah.
And I'm not even trying to throw shade, but I'm like, bro, this is 2023. We in a different time zone. Everybody doesn't eat pork. Everybody doesn't eat this type of food and that type of food. So talk to me about, how do we get to a much more elevated place with our cuisines, with our homegrown meals?
Yeah. So for me, I'm big on education, right? So meaning that formal education. So what's happening now is that people are gravitating toward their comfort zone, right? So, but they're not stepping outside of that comfort zone, and they've taken away a lot of the trade. So a lot of these younger cooks and new cooks are not going to culinary school. I did an apprenticeship in La Rochelle, France. I was milking goats and making goat cheese, like literally studying wines in Bordeaux. Went to study wines in Napa Valley. So it was funny because back in the day, the Food Network asked me to do a pilot for a show called The Melting Pot, and they wanted me to cook smothered chops and gravy, and I did not know how to cook smothered chops and gravy, right? Because I went to the Culinary Institute of America. I was classically French trained. I understand. My passion is about mother sauces and roasting the bones and all of the different techniques associated with charcuterie and garmager and sauté and poissonnier and all those types of things. So it would be nice if we would now branched out and say, okay, how come a Black man can't own a pizzeria, right? How come a Black man can't own or create an Asian food concept, right? A French food concept, an Italian food concept. That's what's missing. And that's I appreciate you giving me this platform, because I'm the guy that can go out here and act almost like I say, as it's my ministry, to let me teach you how to diversify the cuisine offerings. And then what you'll also see is, yes, now we'll see other techniques, cooking techniques. So I'll see a young cook in the kitchen and I'll ask him, does he really know what he's doing? Or I'll see a chef and I'll ask her, I'll say, chef, do you really understand, or have you communicated to the rest of the brigade what we do as chefs? As chefs, we're masters of heat. That's what we do, right? I can look at something. If it's protein, I can tell you it's going to coagulate, and I can tell you what temperature is going to be coagulated. I can tell you that eggs whites are going to coagulate 149 degrees before the yolks coagulate about 150 degrees, right? I'm going to tell you that starches are going to gelatinize. I'm going to tell you that sugar is going to caramelize, and I'm going to tell you that water is going to evaporate. So now, based upon what it is we're applying these heating techniques to, dry cooking methods, we even deep frying. People think deep frying is a moist cooking method. It's a dry cooking method, which is why the chicken comes out of the fryer crispy because you're drying up. You're taking the molecular structure of the protein and you're changing it by applying a certain level of heat. You can stick your hand in a 120-degree oven, but you cannot stick your hand in 120-degree water because of the way that the heat is transferred differently. So when I break the science, right, of what we do on the culinary side, it will then ultimately transition its way over to what the customer's expectations are and what the customer's demands are. So yeah, now we can make that food a lot more healthier. We can offer a lot more variety to our menus just by educating ourselves on how to do that and simultaneously maximize profit on it.
And Chef and Suzette, I'm wondering, Suzette, please join in on this part. How do we educate ourselves? And I mean, like listening to you, listening to you, Chef, I can't cook worth for nothing. I can't even boil water right. But how do we really educate ourselves in understanding that level of science about food, right? Because a lot of us, I think, and I'm sure you understand this, that knowledge of what's going on in the kitchen was passed down from mama, grandma, might be from dad or from the uncle, especially when we go out on the grill and all of that stuff. People say, I'm burning. Yeah, you're burning, all right. But how do we, as where we are right now, based on where the culture is, how do we educate ourselves?
Yeah, it's going to take a lot. One, we've gotten away from trade schools, right? Even, AI, artificial intelligence, is taking away a lot of jobs. But the things that I think we have to get back to are plumbing, electricians, carpenters, and culinary and baking and pastries. They're just, the Food Network. People are watching YouTube and watching the recipe, and then call themselves chefs, right? Or call themselves cooks. And I don't want to sound old school. I'm not hating on any of that, right? But I think there's a time and a place for someone to take a deep dive into the educational side of the formal education of truly learning, not only just about culinary arts and baking and pastries, but about running a profitable restaurant. When you look at Panera Bread, I don't care what your opinion is about Panera Bread. I don't care what your opinion is about Red Lobster, right? But in terms of what we want to grow up to be like as Black restaurateurs, we want to grow up to be Panera Bread and have 16-17% net operating profits, right? We want to grow up and be like them so that we have multiple units. So I can have one successful restaurant and I can teach you how to establish repeatable strategies for maximizing profits so that now if you got a $2 million restaurant, I have clients that basically go from $2 million to $9 million in sales, right? So if I take a client with $2 million restaurant and I teach him how to maximize those profits, and then I teach him how to expand. And now he went from a $2 million restaurant to a $4 million restaurant company, right? A restaurant group. So when you see these multi-unit operators and you see, non-Black restaurateurs who are owning and operating multiple operations, whether they're bar lounges, whether they're burger places, whether they're fine dining, whether they're family style, but it's because there's a science behind building profitable restaurants and then growing into a restaurant group. That's my ministry. That's what I'm really trying to teach people. So for those that are out there that want to learn how to really build a restaurant group, holla at your boy.
There it is. Hey, Suzette, you got the last question, last word with Chef Jason Waller.
This is so much wonderful information, Chef. And thank you for saying the business acumen matters. Like people, especially even as a lawyer, people want to go out and start their own law firm, but they don't teach us how the business of law works. We know the law itself. But it's like, I can hear so many similarities with other industries in what you're saying. We might have a gifting, but then to understand how to run the business side is what oftentimes holds us back. So I know it is not a one size fits all. And I wanted to ask you about how people would even venture to begin, because I know folks here in Miami, you got the folks that cook on Sundays after, church out of their house and you order food from them, or folks who have started with food trucks. And I think about, great restaurateurs that we were talking about, like with that model, the model, it's a business model. It's not just about the food. Marcus Samuelson, I just ate here in Miami, his Red Rooster restaurant, where they have one in New York, they have one in Miami, they have one of other places. Pinky Cole, I know, is expanding a lot. Shout out to Chef Creole here in Miami and other Black-owned restaurants who have figured out the model, have perfected the food, but understand the McDonaldization, I don't know what to call it, of how this works to prepare yourself for the numbers. Where is the profitability of what you're doing? So I want to ask you, if you can, I know this is a short amount of time, do we start cooking out the back of the house on weekends and selling plates at work? Do we start with food trucks when we are not as probably able to create, I guess, from the legacy side, you know, the investment, if we have to begin with, you know, almost nothing, where do we start?
Yeah, start with where you are. I want to encourage everyone to, you know, follow your passion. Don't lose the passion, but you need to link up with someone else that could bring the other business analytical skills to the table, right? You mentioned Pinky. Pinky's actually a client of mine. I work with her in her bar vegan concept in Atlanta. So, you know, it's you know, she's a great example of how she started with a truck and then expanded into the empire that she has now, right? $100 million organization. But that's exactly what I'm talking about. Dream big, but also you got to understand what that roadmap looks like, and in terms of how do I get from where I am now, start where you are, and then let's just move forward. Well, we have to do a financial analysis of what it is you're currently doing. Do you really understand what it's costing you per pound for every ingredient that you're buying? Do you understand if there's any yield loss during cooking, during butchering? Do you understand what's the difference between the weight that you purchase it and the weight that actually ends up on the plate to the customer? And the difference between that is not profit. People think it is. It's called contribution margin. And contribution margin is the difference between the selling price and the cost. But the contribution margin is called contribution, not profit, because it goes to contributing to all the other business expenses that you haven't accounted for, right? That you haven't put into the equation, such as rent, or if you have a food truck, there's maintenance on that truck, right? There may be gas, there's labor, there's permits, there's insurance, there's marketing, there's advertising. There's all these other dollars that are on the expense side that actually have to come out of the difference between what your selling price is and what the cost of the food is. And people end up, they often stop there. They say, well, I'm making a profit because my food, it's only 30%. Well, that other 70% is not profit, because those other 70 pennies on the dollar have to go somewhere. So I'm going to show you how to really understand where every penny on every dollar is going. And then ultimately, and I'm writing a book and it's coming out for Black History Month. It's called Where's the Effing Profit? But effing is spelled with a PH, because no one is accounting for the profit. You got to add your profit in there as well. Then you got to go back and say, will the customers pay for it? Right? You got a couple of options. I can increase the selling price. I can decrease the ingredient cost, or I could decrease the portion size.
Sir, so you're teaching a business class at this point.
Hey, Seth.
This is business 101.
You're taking this from an interview to a TED Talk, bro.
Do a TED Talk, because you got it, sir.
No. Hey, Seth, there's nothing but love here, man. You're my family here, bro. So, no, I love this. And I know I got to take a nuts pause, but I want to give people your contact information, so that way they know exactly how to connect with you. And you talking about you writing a book, you know, you need to come back to Black Star Network, to the culture, to have those conversations and for us to be involved in supporting you in that effort. But what's the contact information, brother?
Jason at restaurantscientist.com. Email JASON at restaurantscientist.com. Instagram is restaurantscientist.com. And office number is 973-668-2151. 973-668-2151. Jason Wallace, Restaurant Scientist.
Let's go.
Let's go right there. There it is. Boom. And let me just say, look at that. Hey, Seth, I'm going to be honest with you, brother. The way you talk about this is so refreshing. It's not just talking about, my sister Janelle, she said, she brings up, and I'm going to say her piece real quick, because she talked, she said, our Farajii says that our folks don't place enough weight and the value of tradesmanship and professionalism, they throw stuff on a plate with no system in place. What's his contact info? That's why I had to put that contact info. We just throw stuff on a plate. We think, like you said, it's emotional, it feels good, it tastes good, it looks good, but there is a whole science to this thing, right? And I know for me, like coming from Baltimore to LA and even traveling to other places, you see Black restaurants, you get excited about it, 5 months and 6 months, 1 year later, they gone, boom. Another one pops up, you get excited again, they gone. The sustainability is just not there. And I think that if more people really, talk to you, talk to people that understands the landscape, talk to folks that know how to run a restaurant, then we can see some growth in our community. But I'm tired of these like carry out. I'm tired of these little chicken shacks. I know they taste good, but these are not like the stuff that builds community. This is not going to bring people to the community. So I appreciate you, dear brother. Thank you for being with us on the show today.
No doubt.
And I'm sure Suzette will be reaching out to you very soon.
No, you are a wealth of knowledge. I'm glad you came by to share it with us.
Anytime. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you, Chef Jason Wallace, aka the Restaurant Scientist. Make sure y'all follow him on all social media platforms. Hey, Chef, are you on Spill? Are you on these new platforms yet?
No, I'm not.
Get on now.
I need some help with that. I'm kind of.
You need some help with that. See, the Restaurant Scientist needs some help on social media. Come on, man.
I need a lot of help.
There we go, man. Hey, Chef, thank you so much, dear brother. We look forward to reconnecting with you soon. All right, folks. You're welcome. Absolutely. All right, folks, we got to take another quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about Black women. Don't get mad. We got to have this conversation. I was reading this piece about Black women being unapologetic in their sexuality. My question is it necessary? My sister Suzette and I are going to have this conversation. Of course, no conversation is complete without you. So get ready to join us in a few moments as we talk about this issue. Join us right here. Stay tuned right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us.
We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us.
Invest in Black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home. You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. For our final conversation, I wanted to have a discussion about something I came across on theroot.com by a sister by the name of Monique Judge, who wrote an op-ed talking about the sensuality and sexuality of Black women. Since this has been a big topic over the past few days, her piece, Keke Palmer and Other Black Women Deserve to Express both their sensuality and sexuality unapologetically. The thesis of her opinion piece is that she said there have been a number of instances recently where Black women have faced intense scrutiny for song lyrics, sexy performances, the outfits they were wearing, and everything in between that involves their personal self-expression. Enough is enough. I wanted to bring this up because I find this is a big part of the culture, especially with the latest situation with Keke Palmer and her boyfriend, Darius Jackson, who made those statements about her outfit when she went to see Usher the other day. But then there's always that conversation that we see with Meg Thee Stallion, with India Irie, another Black woman said about the hip hop star and her performance at the Essence Music Festival. And then you have Tracy Ellis Ross. Then I saw, and I want to bring my sister Suzette back into this frame on this. Then I saw something on the Griot today, Suzette, where somebody came at Gabrielle Union. Did you see this?
Yeah,
basically, they came
too old to be wearing a bikini or whatever.
Right. They said that she was too old. She's 50 years old. They said she's too old to be wearing
and looks
bikini.
good.
Bikini. And so she had some choice words to say to whoever said this. And it's always interesting. It's always funny that human nature, that you can get 100 people that love you, but if you get 1 or 2 people that hate you, that just throws off your whole equilibrium, your whole chi. You know what I'm saying? People really get under your skin. But she said that she doesn't care what a person thinks, that most likely, she said, I will probably go and wear a bikini in a casket. She said, if I want to show them ass cheeks, I will.
Lord have mercy.
Lord have mercy. But here's the part of the conversation I really wanted to have with you, Suzette, because I'm saying this not in a space of policing a women's body or anything. That's not the energy and the spirit I'm in. But I'm asking the question, is it necessary? Is it really necessary for Black women in particular to assert, to be unapologetic about their sexuality, considering Black women have always been seen as sexual human beings from the time we were brought to the shores of North America? I don't think that's a war. That's a battle that needs to be waged. Unless somebody tell me a time in American history where a Black woman was seen outside of what her body looks like, outside of her physical. So I'm not understanding exactly why is there this fight of we need to show the world our sexuality when, since we have been enslaved, the slave master has used Black women for pleasure and breeding new slaves. When in American history has Black women not been seen as sexual human beings? Talk to me about this. I'm not understanding this war.
Well, Farajii, I thank you for raising this topic. It is a loaded topic.
Loaded, so, I get it.
Meaning that, not every Black woman is going to feel the same way about this issue. And I preface my comments here in saying that there's a lot to unpack in why, per your comments, there is this kind of, what should I say, pushback from a lot of corners of the internet, not just inside the Black community, but outside, as to why Black women's self-expression is deemed to be problematic. So let's talk about these in specific cases. And again, folks will have differences of opinion when it comes to what we see when we look at these women that we're talking about. So you talk about Keke Palmer, and what happened with her was that she's at the Usher concert. And again, context for me matters. She goes to see Usher in Vegas, and she goes to have a good time, as any, young woman who is looking for, this type of entertainment does. She goes in a see-through ensemble where you could see her derriere quite clearly in kind of like a thongish bodysuit. And there were comments made by her child's father, Darius, to the effect of, you are a mom. Why are you there? And why, basically what you got on, and, standing on his square, so to speak, when it came to further comments he made, which, to paraphrase, were of the effect, this is my family and this is my representation and this is how you represent me. And I rest my case. And everybody was saying, pushback was, you didn't marry her and you're not in a traditional relationship. Now you want to be Mr. Traditional. Nonetheless. So speaking about Keke Palmer, what happened there is a dimension of respectability politics that has always plagued the Black community as a whole.
Okay.
But Black women in specific, due to what you've just mentioned as far as the historical context here in America. Our bodies were not our own. Our bodies were given a meaning that we didn't necessarily give them ourselves. Being in our own form, in our natural form, and how God made us was just normal to us. But a meaning in the Americas became attached to it based on how others projected what they felt on us. Now, whether we agree with that meaning or not, we still have to live with the consequences, which is that I can't wear, me personally, I say it to myself, and respectability, again, is something that I have to live under auspices of as an attorney. I cannot wear certain things due to my profession when I'm in court or when I'm in those spaces of professionalism. But this was obviously in an after hours entertainment setting. But what I want to make with that point is that no matter where we are, we just cannot be. We just cannot have fun because of the lack of representation still to this day of other types of Black women. That yes, there are multiple dimensions of us, just like there are of any other woman. But the idea that we shouldn't show all of them because other people project upon us a meaning and a value or undervalue who we are based on their interpretation or their comfort level with how we move and just are and how we dress. Is it appropriate to tell us to self-regulate and not express our full womanhood so that others are comfortable? Or is it also, to a point I see made here in the chat, important because the advancement of Black women depends on how people view us and whether they see us or take us seriously, because there are some women who are much more expressive or much more comfortable with their sexuality and sensuality. And should we allow space for that level of comfort? Or does it hurt the whole entire community by having this, I would say just even in music right now, this whole group of women who have come forward in especially the rap scene who are unapologetic about their sexuality and feel as if it's a form of empowerment. I don't know if I necessarily agree, but for them, it's a form of empowerment when they talk about, their sexual exploits and what they do. So for me, I can only talk about how I feel. I know for a fact, I do take, especially in Miami, a very, very thoughtful approach when it comes to what I wear and how I dress. That's not every Black woman. I know for my profession and what I have to hold out to the world, I can't wear certain outfits, etc. Now, you might catch me in the right context at a reggae party with a whole nother dress, and you might see a little extra of my body because that's what the context calls for. So the question becomes for me, Farajii, are we able as Black women to have the full spectrum represented? Or is it problematic for all Black women that some of us are much more enthusiastic and open about the parts of our lives that make others feel uncomfortable because they're not comfortable with that level of sexuality as we express it? So I'm looking at the Tracee Ellis Ross picture where she has posted, where she's sitting on her bed, her legs showing and all this, and one where she's cupping her breast, her bare chest, and sitting, for, selfie in the mirror. And people are really uncomfortable with this because, again, there's so many layers to what Black women's bodies have meant here in the American context that we ourselves trying to express ourselves in our natural state becomes uncomfortable, problematic, and always, questioned by others as if this is the quote right thing to do. And my question is, why can other women have these many different facets of themselves and express them freely, but we take all the judgment.
But here's the thing, and I'm hearing a little feedback on my end. I don't know if you're hearing it as well. Okay. The thing is, Black women have been seen through that lens for a very long time. Now, is this about policing women's bodies where a woman can't express herself? I don't think this, the point that I'm making is that it's not about policing a woman's body. It's not even about stifling self-expression. I think the point is coming down to it's one thing for a woman who, and I've seen artwork where Black women are naked and they show that, whether they have a child or by themselves, they're in a pose. The woman's body is naturally beautiful, naturally attractive. So that's not, and I think that part of the sexualization comes from our time in America. It comes from the fact of what happened when we were enslaved, and all the way up to this present moment, the sexualization of women. We are in a hyper-sexualized culture now. And so my concern is that, are we fighting to be even more? Because the fight for me would be, if Black women have been seen as sexual playthings, and I'm just using this term, for hundreds of years since we've been here, wouldn't the new fight be how to make sure that there is more emphasis on a woman's mind or a woman's, what she brings to the table, her brilliance? Because guess what? Let me tell you, women, y'all don't have to, Suzette, you are a beautiful sister. You don't have to do much. You can just simply walk outside your door. Get into your car, and guess what? You're gonna turn heads. That's not a fight. Then you leave men defenseless. You know what I'm saying? Like, Black women, as beautiful as Black, and I think a lot of men in the chat can agree with me. Y'all, we don't look, when we come around and see a beautiful woman, we like in a trance. We don't hear nothing. We don't see nothing. We just gone. We like, oh, wow. Like, there's no fight there. I'm thinking that the fight would be on the other side, though. Like, I'm not mad at that Kiki, Tracy, and Meg want to express their sexuality, but doesn't that play into the male gaze? Doesn't that play into the hypersexual culture that we are currently in? Doesn't that take away from, and I'm saying, of course, we're still trying to break down the walls and break through the glass ceilings, but doesn't that play into the hands of men who control these industries in the entertainment, music, and all of these other industries? Doesn't that play into exactly what you say that you are going against? And then the other part of this is this form of empowerment. Would you teach that to your daughters?
Yeah. To play devil's advocate, I can't speak for any of the ladies, but to look at what they may be feeling, they may possibly actually see it as a form of empowerment by saying that this is authentically how I feel, how I want to look, how I want to dress, and I want to express that to the world. Let me be me. If you don't like it, if you don't have to watch it, you don't have to ask your daughter to watch me, etc. I don't necessarily agree, because with the platforms that they have, we know that young women are impressionable. We know that, teens and kids who are, we just talked about parents working 24/7 are looking to these ladies as role models. And that was India Irie's point. Now, what happened at Essence Festival is, again, we had the ladies, Megan Thee Stallion, as well as Janelle Monáe on stage. And it was like a twerk scene around the world. Bunch of people from the audience came on. And again, Essence Festival, I thought to myself, this is an interesting, again, context about women's empowerment and what, again, the definition of what people feel are empowering moments. I wouldn't necessarily say a bunch of women necessarily together on a stage twerking is empowerment for me. For me personally, that's not how I.
But see, guess what though? You're going to be affected by that because you are a Black woman. You are part of the hip hop community. So if Black women are saying, yeah, that's empowerment, then they're going to automatically make the assumption that, and I'm just saying, not to say it's right, not to say it's fair, but they're going to automatically make the assumption that as a Black woman that has grown up in this time, that is part of the hip hop culture, that you agree with that. You see what I'm saying? It's hard to differentiate and say, oh, Suzette doesn't like it, but this person does. Nobody's thinking that way. Nobody's getting to the very minute details of that differentiation.
And I agree with what you're saying. That was some of what India Ari was pointing out in her long statement, and y'all can read her statement for herself. I agree with you. And I think, to my original point, representation among the different types of Black women that exist in America is so limited that when we do take up space, I agree there is a sentiment among both men and women on our community that when we do get the opportunity to get these major roles, to get on, to become the anchor of the broadcast station, when we get the time to be, up front and people are paying attention, what are we doing with that time? Your point is well taken, that people are not distinguishing at all whether, this type of representation is just one small group or a small subset of Black women, because they don't have that experience with that many Black women. They don't know that many Black women. Many people don't have a lot of Black people in their communities or where they live across America. So I understand your point, and I agree with it, that because, again, we are underrepresented when it comes to certain types of genres and the type of, quote, stereotypes that are pushed constantly from slavery till now, is still saying you are less than, you are dirty, you are overly sexual. Again, those were put in place by even some of our white sisters in those earlier times in the United States. I'm talking about 1800s and 1700s to kind of perpetuate this idea that we were animalistic and that we were driven by sexual urges as an excuse as to why your husband is out back in the field with whoever and producing these offspring. But this was a constant battle of your body is not your own, and how to cover it, how to be modest was something that was even just, a part of survival. So now that we have a choice, what are we doing with the choice? I understand your point. It's not necessarily beneficial to the culture. Who is actually controlling the culture? We talked about that with Nicole. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
No, and I'm glad you brought the word choice, because when I talk about female empowerment, I'm talking about, and this is for me personally, I'm fighting for making sure that a woman can decide what to do with her body, right? I'm talking about that level of empowerment. I'm talking about legalizing and politicizing the women's body. That women have the choice on what to do with the body. How do y'all take care of yourselves? How you want to be seen and presented? The situation, Meg Thee Stallion, for example, she did that at Essence Festival. She got invited to the Global Citizens Festival with Lauryn Hill. Will we see Black women? I said this yesterday when I made mention of this. Will we see Black women on stage twerking at the Global Citizen Festival, where they're talking about empowering empowering girls around the globe? When they talk, no, I truly doubt that.
But she might.
I truly doubt that. And see, you put it in, and see, part of me is like, I'm starting to get upset, and I'm talking about any artist. I don't care if it's male or female. That Black artists put this bullshit to us. Right, in our space, at Essence and other spaces where Black people, but when you go out in front of the world, you want to show something else. And it's like, man, you selling us a wolf ticket and you call this quote unquote the enemy of our people, want to say, oh, it's empowerment. But the empowerment is still fits your agenda.
Or the greater agenda.
Or the greater agenda. The empowerment is it doesn't break us out of your control. It actually plays us further into your control, where you can use a woman and over-sexualize a woman. This is not about police. And again, this is not about police. I'm just saying, I think we should stop using certain words to say, oh, this is empowerment. That's not empowerment. If you want to use, if this is your body, a woman can wear sweats, she can still be violated, right? Because the over-sexualization, the hypersexualization of women, right? So there are so many women that I've talked to who say they are so tired of catcalls, they're tired of men saying inappropriate things while they're just out and about running errands and all of those things. Ask a sex worker, ask somebody who's done stripping, do they feel empowered when men just gawk over them and want to touch them and want to, and that's my concern, because what do you pass on that form of empowerment to little girls? I got a 4-year-old daughter. Do I pass that on to my daughter? Do I say, baby, go ahead, shake your ass, because that's empowerment?
Again, I think what you're saying is 100% true. I think there may be distinguished, generational attitudes. I think there may be, India Ari is from the quote, not what is considered old school, and has a different perspective because she's lived longer and she's had, kind of like, I'm not saying the other ladies do not understand, global politics, United States history and the things that we've fought against. But I do think there is a generational, what should I say, shift, not across the board, because I know young women who also are, I'm talking about, 18 to 29, of the attitude that does this really help my standing in society. And again, I always look back at our white counterparts, our white sisters don't have the burden of having to control their image because there's so little representation of the multifaceted ways in which they can be in the world.
And you know what?
The black nerd, the superwoman has her place. You might be relegated to, you must be one of these trashy so-called women. But go ahead, sorry.
No, real quick, because I know we got to wrap up. Here's the thing. Black women lead the world in everything, in culture, perception, the very essence of black women. Y'all lead the world. So since y'all are leaders of the culture, y'all are leaders of dictating what the time is. It's all determined by black women. And I don't know if a lot of sisters know this, but people are watching you. And I'm not saying that you got to fall into somebody's expectation. Not at all. I'm just simply saying that being mindful of those things. And again, this is not about trying to put you in some box, but at the same time, we're seeing that the enemy of our rise, they're using your sexual and sensual persona as a way to be emphasized instead of the brilliance, the spirit, the mind, all that you really bring to the table. That's always put to the back burner. And people, and we don't know that. As much as Meg Thee Stallion has put it out there, I'm sure she's a brilliant woman. People say that she came out of college. There's a lot of women that come out of college and they do wild shit. I mean, just because you got a college degree doesn't make you, like you just this saintly human being. I'm just sitting there making a point that your sexuality, your sensuality is something that the world has seen. What is going to be a different personality that we have not seen? What part of the black woman have we not seen that the world needs to see in order to break the chains of oppression and chauvinism and gender inequality? Your body speaks for yourself. You're born beautiful. You don't need to emphasize. In my opinion, you don't need to emphasize that.
Powerful points, but again, we talked about here who controls that narrative of especially music industry artists, and whether they control it or not. We know that sex sells, and we haven't stopped buying it. And again, will we buy something else if the marketplace presented it? Absolutely. Will we, indie films, these type of sitcoms, we talked about it here, that we want other, food. That's why Roland Martin created even this platform. Why are we being relegated to this one dimensional and very kind of stereotypical side of ourselves, where again, I can be sexy and sensual as well. That's a part of womanhood, but I also have these attributes. But I'm saying that we carry as black women a greater burden than all other groups to oftentimes, meet societal expectations in one mold. And then I'm saying that generationally, there is a group of women that are pushing back, and their understanding of what empowerment is. I think I agree with mostly, what the definition you've been laying out, that there is a kind of gap in understanding. Is this really empowering? Is being, very revealing and almost naked? And, I'm thinking a la Asuki Hana and some of my other girls that are really pushing the boundaries when it comes to, sexual expression. Do they have the right to be able to do that and feel as if they are in some way empowered by this? Or are we as a community going to push back, as you're saying, and say, we're not buying this, we don't support it, we're going to speak out against it, because this is not as a whole benefiting the community as much as it should be. There's a lot to be said. I know we're out of time.
We're out of time.
But it's saying about it loud and clear, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying there's a different school of thought for some. And again, when people get older, their attitudes do change. They look around and say, okay, now you can drop it like it's hot and twerk. But again, is that even limiting your career, like to what you're able to do? Or
hey, look,
we gonna do it so that people can see this is us too, and I can still get back to the books and get back to running the country. It's not so easy. Our imagery is so limited. Again, you got a Michelle Obama, and you got whoever else. Like, we're just getting the Michelle Obama as a normal part of the spectrum of Black womanhood. So I agree with what you're saying a lot when it comes to, is this really empowerment? I do think there are a broad range of opinions among even Black women, but a lot of what you just said.
Hey, April and infamous Kiki, y'all bringing up the fact about how Black men think about Black women. It sucks. Somebody did, like April, you said, what about Black men talking about Black women in social media spaces? Sucks. Infamous Kiki, you said, what about these Black male artists talking about the size of their genitals and all of the exploits? It sucks. It's across the board. It sucks.
It's a double standard.
It's a huge double standard, no doubt. It's a huge double. But here's the thing: we can't pass on this culture to our children and expect us to rise to be liberated, whether you're a man or a woman.
I was about to say from men or from
either way. You can't pass that on. You can't pass that on. Look, I know we got our time has been well spent. My sister Suzette Speaks. Check her out on YouTube, y'all. Definitely follow her on all social media platforms. She is absolutely dope. She knows what she's talking about, man. One of our greatest contributors here on the show. I love Wednesdays and talking to her. She brings a lot to the table. And guess what, Suzette? You bring a lot to the table, and you ain't got to do nothing crazy.
I know, right? Fully clothed.
Fully clothed. Yeah, look, you beautiful as you are, sis. Appreciate you. Thank you for checking in.
Don't see me in a see-through outfit, though. I'm just gonna say, if you saw me in Miami Beach last week.
Hey, look, I'm not liking it. I'm gonna just keep scrolling. Right?
It wasn't me. No, but no, I hear what you're saying. Powerful points, and y'all leave y'all comments below. There's much more to be said on this topic. Of course, thank you, Farajii, for an amazing platform that you created here. I always enjoy being here.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, see you next week.
Appreciate you. Talk to you next week. All right, folks, make sure y'all do your due diligence. Support us here at Black Star Network. Go to blackstarnetwork.com, download the app for free, follow us on social media, and financially give. All right, that's going to do it for me. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we will talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture. We're going to be checking in with Dr. Melina Abdullah to talk about Black Lives Matter 10-year celebration happening this weekend in LA and so much more. So I look forward to reconnecting with you tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Peace.